That was extremely professional. Starting the podcast, talking for 5 minutes, and then realizing we didn't press play.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say this is like the second try and a perfect place to start. Welcome to the In&OUTSIDE EU podcast. This is episode number 215. We're here in Berlin. My name is Yassi, my co-host Marco, and today we have a special guest, Benjamin. We watched your piece, 60% Banana on Berlin Circus Festival yesterday. Thank you so much for being here, but maybe just give us a quick introduction for viewers at home because people don't know you, I guess, but you should come to Berlin Circus Festival next time or whatever you're performing, but maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. So my name is Benjamin. My artist name is Monki. I am the artistic director of a company called Monki Business, and we make theatrical circus performances, which means that I was trained as an acrobat. So I went to a circus school called Codarts in Rotterdam, and there I learned the skills of a Chinese pole acrobat. It's called in German. It was a Chinesische Mast, and maybe I will explain a bit about that later. But what we do is I'm often on stage, but I also sometimes direct, and sometimes other people direct these pieces, because especially when I perform on stage, I can't also be the one directing, because then I have to look at myself all the time, so it doesn't work. So I collaborate with different people in every performance. For example, the piece that you saw was I sort of made it together with the guy that I work with a lot, who is called Bas van Rijnsoever. And so what we do is we blend circus skills, movement, acrobatics, something that mesmerizes, something that I guess what I find remarkable about circus is that it brings something out of the ordinary. I really like that element of like the moment. So I'm an acrobat that climbs in poles of 6 meters high. And I can do that in a way that makes it look like I'm like you would be walking on the street. And the moment that I do that, the sort of reality shifts a little bit. I think this is what I really like about circus, is like the moment I start walking in a pole as if it's normal. For you as an audience, for who that's not normal, we get into this kind of like, but wait, if that's normal now, then what else is normal, or like what else is like new, or like, we get into sort of new reality. And so you can question, I think circus questions norms and questions like, so we do it like this, but can't we also do it like this? And I think somehow that also found its way into the fact that I join circus and theater, and mostly the theater part is I always add text in my pieces, because I know now, after a few years of making, sort of 10, 11 years of making pieces, that the reason I make these pieces is because it's a way for me to express my thoughts on how we live together, or like what I see around me. And so I add text to add this layer of like, hey, as we said just before, some people would add depth. You use this word and I really like it. So you have circus, but it's basically also, it can be a bit superficial. Like it can also be just like, hey, I have a trick and look at me do that trick. But we all tried to find depth in a way. Some people go, like there was this amazing piece that I saw yesterday called How a Spiral Works by this company called Art for Rainy Days, which is also on the Berlin Circus Festival. And they just went into a world of movement research, and they took you along on a path into their depth in how they would sort of develop. And I do that by adding text and adding words, so that I can talk to you about the world and about what I see, and I have a sort of, I don't know, socially engaged message in there that helps me, that I want to get across. And I like talking, as you noticed already. And I also like talking to the audience. I love the direct relation that we get when we speak to the audience on stage.
So for you, it's basically using your acrobatic skills to catch people off guard. And once they start thinking, then you start your text and try to get your social message across.
Kind of, yeah. It's a sort of Trojan horse, maybe.
Yeah.
That's like a vehicle,
It's definitely a vehicle. It's how this show starts, also. No, like It's not by accident that I take a moment to just be on stage as a physical. I mean, there's a little hint of a banana costume before, but basically the show that you saw, I take a moment to be on stage as a physical being, and a physical being that's a bit different from what you're used to as a human sort of everyday person, because I go upside down, I climb, I jump from pole to pole, and then I start talking, and so hopefully by then I've already attracted your attention a little bit of like, ooh, what's going on here, and then hopefully I don't lose it by talking again, and then I move a bit again, and then, and I hope that in this piece, for example, I think the fact that that's another factor of Circus is the fact that I have to. So in the show, without spoiling too much, but yeah, this will be aired after. You can come and see it in Berlin, so it's okay. Maybe we should come to Munich at some point. Anyway, in the show, I climb in these poles. There's 3 poles standing, and I climb in these poles to show the audience graphs, so lines across the stage that show developments in the world, extreme poverty, child mortality, very sort of serious developments, but I show them to show that there are also positive developments in there that I believe we should know about to keep hope for the future. But I think the fact that I don't just tell you them, but the fact that I physically have to put almost my life on the line to make them visible for you, I think that's another part of Circus that is like that physical engagement, the embodiment, the fact that I sweat and sometimes bleed to, make it happen. I think that's important somehow.
That worked so well. We were talking also before that we watched some shows already, and every artist has this unique way of portraying what they want the audience like to see, and that's what I like about Circus. It's not like YouTube or social media where you click on stuff that you want to see, but you get to see what the artist wants to show you, kind of, and then you can, of course, interpret a little bit. Everybody will see this a little bit different, but the way you were doing it, I thought was very, very unique, and that's why we really enjoyed the show. Also, like the other ones, but it was just very special. I really like that.
Thank you. Yeah, and also shout out to Berlin Circus Festival for really putting together such a diverse program and having the courage, I think, also to show these very different, because Circus has a how do you say that? We have an idea. A lot of us have an idea when we think of the word circus, and so people sometimes come to the circus to circus performances with a lot of expectations, and we all know that by now, and that's also fine. Like I often get the word, like I quite often get the question, but is it circus what you do? Because there's no saltos in my show, in this show. There are some others, yes, but and I really appreciate, what I wanted to say is I just really appreciate the fact that Berlin Circus Festival took the freedom, but also so it's like a sort of creative freedom and a sort of, they want to show the audience all these very different sides of circus. Like that afternoon I saw a show that was so different from ours, and then even the one you saw, because we were part of a double bill. So there's a guy that performs before us called João Paulo dos Santos, who has a show called Une Partie de Soi, and it's also Chinese pole, so it's the same discipline, it comes from the same history somehow, but it's completely different. There's no text, it's just movement, it's very still, and so I just love that they took because it can also put people off of like, hey, wow, you're giving us all these different things, what are we supposed to expect? And I think, as you said, like circus, I think is just beautiful in its sort of richness of everything is possible, and everyone finds something else.
I'm sorry if this is a stupid question, but I'm just like no expert in this area. How many shows have you already done in your life? And is this the first time that you're like at this circus festival, or have you played the same piece last year, for example, or something, or do you? How long do you play pieces for?
Yeah, that's a nice question. Yeah, I mean, to answer the question of how many shows, I made around like I've been doing this. I've been graduated from the Circus School for about 11 years now, and I've everything together with my own company, and I also founded a company in France at some point. All together, I think I made already about 10 different shows.
Wow.
Which is not to sort of, it was not to how to say boast,
not
but
to brag,
it's just somehow came about, and I've had the opportunity to keep making new things, and they've all been very different things. There's been hour-long shows that were solos for me. There's been kind of like this, like a smaller piece, which is 30 minutes, so also performs outdoor a lot. And we made a very big collective show with 7 acrobats that toured through the big theaters in France. And generally these pieces, they tour for several years. So this piece, for example, it premiered so the 60% Banana, I mean, it premiered in 2022, so already 3 years ago. And this one somehow, we could say, is sort of like the most successful for now, at least in terms of how much and how often it performs. This year has been a very quiet year. We only performed twice, once in Lübeck, actually, also in Germany, at the Circus Festival, and then once here. And what was really, or both were sort of several times in a row, but what was really special here in Berlin is that we performed at this same festival, this same performance, 60% Banana, 2 years ago, actually. And the year before that, we were there with another performance. So Berlin Circus Festival is definitely a sort of a good, you could say, a good friend. You know, our companies are good friends, and we're also friends with some of the people in the companies. And but it was very special for me that's never happened to me before, that I was invited to come and perform the same show on the same festival again, because often people think, well, the audience has already seen it 2 years ago, so nobody will come and see it a second time or something. And so,
oh, really?
Well, this is generally how people program. Also, I mean, in all honesty, there's just so much new stuff being made all the time. There is, I can understand also that you would like to show something new, but I got the opportunity. I mean, this show has a very optimistic message, or at least it tries to give a sort of hopeful, optimistic message, and it activates in a way. And so this really spoke to the programmers of the festival, in this case Jossa Köbel, and he called me up the day after your elections here in Germany a few months ago, and he was like, I didn't know that I was going to ask you this, but we just had elections, and we need your optimistic message in our festival, so can you please come again? So it was, to be honest, a sort of bittersweet reason, of course, but also very touching for me that a piece of art can really, somebody thinks of a piece of art after an election. You know, like, to me, it speaks to how important it is what we do. Like,
we were talking about this yesterday too, because the show before was, like you said, very silent, very slow movement, basically nothing happening really, what you expect from acrobatics. But you, contrary, you were talking a lot and giving a lot of facts. That brings me to the question, if the show was May 22, do you update the figures? Because you recitate a lot of statistics and figures. Do you update them every year?
Yeah, every year. Yeah, I have to. Like, I feel like I should. Like, I feel like I have to. The show, it's really. I think if I wouldn't, I think if the figures were not correct, especially the negative ones, I would, like, I want to give an optimistic message, but I want to do anything but be naive. Like, I don't want to just give a positive message and look away from the negative. And so I feel it's my obligation and also my strategy, to be honest, to be real, because if I'm not, some cynic is going to come and tell me that I'm just cherry picking the facts, you know, and I'm trying not to do that. For example, I didn't really talk about it yesterday while I did it, but there's a statistic in there that is war victims, which is one of the last statistics that we give. And so we mentioned these years going from 1950 to 1988 and then to the present, so 2025. And when I made the show in 2022 and even in 2023, this line was a descending line. Okay. So the line was, it's at 546,000 more or less in 1950, and then it's way less, it's 140,000 in 1988. And then it was the estimates were that it was going to be about 50,000, which, just to be clear, are still very horrible numbers. But the whole point of the show is that we also have to look at the fact that things are, like, there's this famous quote from a guy called Hans Rosling, which really inspired the show. And he said, things can be bad and getting better. And this is, to me, really important. Is like, let's not forget that it's still better than before. But to come back to the point of updating the facts, in 2024, to be realistic and to be fair, I guess, I had to start putting the line in the present higher again. So that's the only sort of fact in the show that gets better and then gets worse, because now there are projected to be more, because of what's happening in Ukraine and Gaza, amongst others. It's now more than it was in 1988, and that's terrible.
Yeah, but it's good that you still keep it, because if you would be naive, you could just cut this fact.
I could have cut it out, yeah.
Do another one,
yeah,
which suits you, but I think this makes it way more realistic and way more appealing.
Yeah. I think people. I'm glad you say that, and thank you for saying that, because I think people can feel that we don't shy away from. I mean, I wouldn't have put war victims in anyway if I was going to make just a very happy-go-lucky show. So it's in there. It's in there for, like, to show that, like, hey, I'm not looking away from the horrible, from the mess that we're making as humans. On the other side, there's also the show sort of climaxes with the growth of the world population, which is another sort of fear. Like, a lot of people are very scared of the fact that the amount of humans living on this planet seems to just increase exponentially and until the world explodes. And even when we made the show, it was already predicted that by 2100 there would be 11 billion people living on this planet. And then in 2024, when I was updating the facts, there was some new news that came out, which put the sort of the peak already earlier in 2080 now. So the show you saw, it was different from 2 years ago, because now I can say that the predictions are that by 2080 there will be 10.2 billion people, which again is still an incredible amount of people, but it is somehow a little less extreme than 2 years ago. Yeah, so there was multiple sort of like adaptations like that.
Yeah, it's still kind of seeing it leveling off. I talked to Yassi about it yesterday. I also had the number of 11 billion tops in my head. So you have the more accurate
it was just
your
new,
numbers.
Yeah.
But you can still, I think in the 1950s it was
2.56. Yeah. So like,
it's tripled till now, and it will not triple again.
No, exactly.
But that's the fear people have.
Yeah.
It will continue going up very, very fast, but it doesn't.
Yeah, and this is really what it's about. I mean, what the show was also very much inspired, again, by this guy called Hans Rosling, who also wrote a very nice book, which in English is called Factfulness. So it's kind of a take on, like, let's be mindful, but let's be mindful based on facts, you know. And he's a statistician, and like where he passed away unfortunately, but he's like a doctor and a scientist, you know. But also he wanted the world to become better. He's the guy that said the things can be bad and getting better, and his whole point was that it's okay to be scared, but it's also important to look at the facts and to look at how the news, for example, influences how we think about the world. So, for example, he makes this point about how we're often scared to how we think flying, like in planes. Just to be clear, I think we should fly a lot less than we are doing at the moment. But he makes the point of that flying looks very dangerous, because if there's a plane crash, then it'll be on the news. But if there's a car crash, it's not always on the news because they happen so often. And so actually, if you look at the facts, car driving is much more dangerous than taking a plane flight. but just because of the way news works and because of the way we push negative facts more than positive facts, or smaller facts, or so it's just let's be realistic. Often I feel like sometimes optimism gets put on the other side of realism. And I actually think you can just as well be optimistic and realistic. And sometimes it's more realistic to be a bit optimistic and be like, hey, actually flying is not that dangerous. But also, by the way, can we look at some other facts? While we're talking about facts, maybe like climate change, we should look at some of those facts before we...
Yeah, the problem is, without getting too much into that topic, that everything is on the news kind of pushes an agenda, and you get just presented what pushes the agenda.
Yep.
So if good news aren't on the agenda, you don't get any.
Yep.
You can always turn any statistic upside down and prove the opposite point if you want to. That's another bad part of statistics, and you can turn it as you like.
Yeah. It's dangerous. Like it's about, this whole factfulness thing is, I think, also about thinking for yourself. And I think we're not as good with that. And it's almost a privilege, I guess, to be able to have time and resources to do your own research and so I guess not everybody has time and headspace to not just watch the news and take whatever they see for granted. It's a privileged position to be in, but it's... Well, I think maybe more. Sorry.
Also, like being able to consume the content that you want to view, like that it's not restricted or something.
Yeah. Well, that's even more so. Yeah. Like, and especially now, like, it's almost impossible to go online and not get pushed information by any sort of algorithm. I'm not necessarily anti-tech whatsoever, but I do think the sort of bubbles that we get pushed into, and especially the fact that we go online onto things that seem sort of, they're free, so we feel like they're sort of like everybody uses them, but something like Instagram or Facebook has its own agenda and has its own agenda to keep you watching, and negative facts can do that, and sort of horrible things can do that better than positive. And this is, I think, something that in general in my work, I'm discovering that what I would like most for us to do is to sort of value softness and being unsure as much as sort of hard, angry shouting and pretending to be sure of something. Because I think that's to your point of what were you saying just before? I had to think of this thing of, you were saying, so everybody has an agenda, but also every fact can be turned upside down, and it's a lot about everybody. Nobody will pretend that they don't know. Like, everybody will shout at you with the truth, And I think it would do us a lot of good if we actually all pretended a bit less to know, and accepted that we don't necessarily completely know what's going on.
I keep telling people that now with a lot of politicians worldwide, they make their own reality. They just state something as a fact, which isn't, but they create their reality how they want it, because how they present facts, or not even facts, how they present their opinion basically as facts, because they can't say, no, I don't know.
Yeah, it's same also with the videos. Like, so many people believe only because something's on the internet that it's the truth, and then that kind of becomes the truth because they consume so much content, and then they build they're very bestätigt. What's the English word? I forgot. Like they're very
insured.
It proves their point. In their own reality, but that doesn't make it real just because like more people think it.
No, but people start to feel it, and that's unfortunately true. Of course, we also have to respect and sort of accept that people like feeling fear is a real emotion, and that's important. But so I think what's really tricky in our time is that, for example, again, maybe not getting into the topic too much, but I always have to think of any sort of immigration sort of. In Holland, there's our government has declared a immigration crisis, and they keep saying the people experience a immigration crisis. So they're actually refusing to say there is an immigration crisis, because there's not. We have much bigger problems going on than immigration. But because they keep talking about this immigration problem, people get scared of the immigration. They think it's a real problem, and so then if you tell people it's not that you shouldn't be scared, you can't tell people that they shouldn't be scared. I think we should tell people, I understand that you're scared, but can we look at the facts together, and can we maybe figure out what you're scared of? And can we solve that for you? Because actually these people are not taking your jobs and not taking your homes, and there's other things that are going on. But I feel like that level of sort of like unsure and slow conversation and sort of loving patience conversation is not possible in many cases, because people shut off and they're like, no, you're against me, or like you're from the other side, left, right, blah, blah, blah.
And there's only sides left. It's not.
There's only sides left, and and the middle is so much more interesting and so much more, but so much. Yeah, there's the balance. No, we get back to Circus. Luckily, like there's this, it's more fragile. It's way more interesting, but also, but politicians exactly, they don't want to be in that middle. They want to be on either side, because it's easier to take a standpoint and to take people along with you. But it's not what we need.
Yeah, everything nowadays is either black or white. There is no gray anymore. But life is gray, and we have the same conversation quite often. That I think, to come back into Circus and the stuff we do, it's like movement. People who stay more active, move more, have also a more agile mind, and they're more likely to get into facts, to read about it, to think critically. But if you don't move, your brain gets kind of zaggy and tired, and you're just longing for, these people are guilty, or whatever. It's just, then if you're not moving, you get tired. You're also not able to think straight, and then you're longing for easy answers. Yeah. And that's what politicians do, give them easy answers for complex problems where there are no easy answers.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's why it's so important to stay active, to move, to get your brain ready to do something also, and not just consume.
Yeah, and even in the movement thing, I think it's interesting that, because even the movement somehow has become, you can also consume movement. No, you can also consume, like you can click on a YouTube video and you can just follow what somebody tells you to do, and you can not feel something. And I think especially movement, what's so powerful about movement, and I'm imagining what you do is this: if you move, but you connect to the body and you feel what it's doing, and you feel, but actually, you think about, okay, but what's this exercise for? But then I need this. Like no body is the same, like not at all. And so no YouTube video can exactly tell you to the millimeter like how you should do your movement, but it can very much sort of give you a framework of what you're looking for and what you're trying to do. But you will always have to think for yourself, feel for yourself, like, okay, is this, and even just to be curious, like, what is this doing to my body? And I think this curiosity is something that, like in anything, this YouTube culture of like, we watch a video and we watch the tutorial, it's 15 minutes, and then you can do the thing. Like I was talking to a friend the other day who was a woodworker, and we're both acrobats as well. So we have these conversations a lot about skill and about developing. And we were sort of, complaining a little bit about the fact that no YouTuber will tell you, I'm giving you this information now, and so it's a recipe, it's a whatever. It's like I teach you. I was about baking bread because I like to bake bread now because I'm a dad. So then you make sourdough bread. You know, that's how life develops. But no, there's no YouTube video that tells you I teach you I give you this sort of basics, and then you need 5 years to learn it, really, like to have it in your fingers and to feel it and to understand how it works and to make up your own mind about, this is how I'm going to do it. Like, because I realized that I didn't, like, I just took the skills and I was like, And then only after like 3 months of doing the same thing and following the same thing, I started to realize, but now it's in my fingers. Now it's like, and that's what we do with Circus also. Like, I mean, to come back to the performance, like this performance specifically, the largest part of the performance doesn't really look like like classical circus. There's not a lot of acrobatics going on in it. I'm mostly moving around in the poles in order to sort of tie ribbons in it to tell a story. But I can do that because I spent by now almost 15 years in these poles. And so I can do it in a way that doesn't look like I'm doing anything. But that's like 15 years of my arms and my legs and my toes and my fingers feeling that material and like taking time with it. And like, so I don't know, there's this thing of, to come back to I think we have to, movement is so great because if you do it, again, mindfully, but sort of bodyfully, I guess, if you really feel, then I think it can teach us a lot about how to engage with the world through yourself.
So when you're training or when you learned, just take pole as an example, probably, I mean, you know how to do other stuff as well, but is that like the way you train also, that that you just see where it takes you, or do you put some certain skills together, or maybe can you explain a little bit of like how your training works, how you acquire new skills, something about that? That would be very interesting, I guess.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, yeah, if I take my own discipline, Chinese pole and double, so like sort of multiple pole as an example, I think in almost any circus skill set or like direction, it's kind of like an instrument, no? Like it's almost like you go to conservatory and you choose whether you're going to do trumpet or cello or no. So with us, it's like at one point you decide, okay, I'm going to spend most of my time on this thing, and then I also do my physical preparation, I do my flexibility training, I dance, I do theater, but then I spend, for example, in circus school, you spend like a daily amount of hours on that sort of discipline, which is in this case Chinese pole. And there's basics. So there's things like climbing up and down a pole, which is, I mean, you could call it like, I was going to say there's basics and then there's the skills. Climbing is just one of the most sort of like most used and the most simple skills, I guess. But then you have a whole vocabulary, a whole catalog of sort of like classical skills, like ways to sit in the pole, ways to sort of like stand, to rest in the pole, positions, figures, you know. I mean, like almost everybody will sort of recognize the flag, no, the human flag, where you're like hanging out on the pole to one side like this. Like if you take that as an example, that's a classical figure that you can learn. And there's about 100 or more other kind of figures that are either static like that, or for example, a front flip on the Chinese pole, like when I was in circus school. I'm a little older now, and I chose not to train these skills so much anymore. So personally, I don't develop these kind of skills anymore. But when I was in circus school, a big part of my training was learning how to do a front and a back and a side somersault on the Chinese pole. And so these are pretty classical sort of, it's almost like a list of like, okay, these are all the skills you can learn. So that's one. But then there's first of all, within these skills is about finding how they work for you. My teacher was 1.50 meters, and he was about 1.50 meters wide as well, because he was so strong. And his legs were like this. And I have quite big legs for a guy that does Chinese pole. And so I had to really find out like how to apply. And we had to find out together, like how does my body do this trick? So within every trick, it's not like, you just watch the video and then you do it. No, you have to sort of like understand, okay, this is the sort of end result that we're trying to get. How do I make it happen? Again, feel, try, fail a lot also. Which is another skill, by the way, that I love having learned, is
failing. That
failing is so essential to the process, like, and failing, how fun it is also,
and falling.
But literally, yeah, and falling safely. No, like, I mean, it's not for nothing that we have crash mats. People always ask me, why don't you have crash mats during your shows? It's because I learned. First of all, I put crash mats under the poles when they're necessary. And this is, again, maybe a good skill, is like, I know when I'm training something that is dangerous. I know when I'm training something that might go wrong in a way that is dangerous. And so I put crash mats under until I am able to control but I'm able to control the going wrong more than the going right, because it's never a problem if it goes right. There's a moment in the show where I walk across so the poles are sort of 4 meters high in this performance, and there's a bar in between them which is like 2 meters long, and so I walk over this bar in between the Chinese poles. So I'm at 4 meters high, balancing like this, and it goes wrong sometimes. But I know how to catch myself, and I will not hit the floor because I know I need to go down. I grab the bar, and then I go to the next pole, which is the nearest pole. So I trained the going wrong rather than the going right, and I think this is a funny sort of paradigm switch in Circus. Is like we always talk about mastered risk, sort of. So it's like it's not that it will never go wrong. It's just that I know very well how to react when it goes wrong.
You've done the fails thousands of times, yeah.
Yeah, so I know
More than the rights, maybe.
yeah. So the rights are not interesting because it's fine if it goes right. It's you need to know what to do when it goes wrong, and that's again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it'll go right. I'm just pretty damn sure it'll be fine when it goes wrong. This is different. But I've completely digressed from your. So how to learn?
No, you have not.
How to learn? Yeah, so this comes into how to learn the skills, I guess. But it's interesting in Circus and in any other sort of like more, I guess, creative. It's a kind of like dance in that way of like, so there's this list of skills that you want to sort of learn and acquire because they become the basis of your language, I guess. But then it's about finding, as you said, also like how to connect them, how to move from one skill into the other, because otherwise it becomes again sort of, hey, I can show you all of these skills I can do, but for example, if you look at the piece that you saw before mine yesterday, he's a master at going from one movement into the other without making it look like he's never really stopping in any of the positions. So you don't see, now he's showing me this or now he's showing me this. He's just sort of like melting around the pole in a way that is based on so much skill and so much like research. Also, he must have spent years of his life like really figuring out, okay, so how can I move sideways? Because he does things in that pole that I don't understand really how he does that, or I sort of understand, but I would not be able to sort of copy it for a few months before I train it. Like he's really so it's really. That's again that depth, I guess, that everybody looks for. Is like, so how do I make this material my own, and how, like, I really enjoy where that name Monki comes from. Is I really enjoy the jumping and the climbing in between the poles. The playfulness, and so I developed also a piece. We're working on a piece currently, and I made another piece like that where we have even more Chinese poles, and so I work a lot on. If I jump to this pole, then I can turn around like that, and I put my foot here, and then I jump to that other one, jump, tuk. So I work on these almost more, it's like somewhere between like swinging like a monkey and doing sort of parkour in between the Chinese poles. And I spend a lot of time doing sort of like working on that. So it's not one specific skill, but it's like, how can I make longer sort of stories almost out of this, or like sort of little choreographies. Mm-hmm. And so that's like I guess a sort of a second step once you've acquired the basics and the ease sort of moving in the discipline. Then it's about finding out how to sort of apply that into longer things, but also how to apply it in your work. And that's interesting to Circus or it may be interesting to making sort of performance art in any way is. Every time it's different. Like I had to learn things for this show. After this show I made when I was already graduated for, 7 years or something. Mm-hmm. And I had to learn things for this show specifically that I had never thought about learning before, because this show needed those skills.
So how do you know that? Like how do you fight that battle saying, okay, I have this skill, but I'm not going to put it into this piece, for example, but then also saying, okay, maybe that would be a nice skill to learn and put into the next one.
That's a very nice question. That's a tough battle, as you called it, especially the one of I have this skill, but I'm not going to put it in, because there's always a bit of. It might be ego. It might sometimes ego, and it's also enthusiasm, we spend so much time working on these sort of things that we think are really cool also to do and that we are really excited about, and it's fun to share them. But for example, this show, there was even more acrobatics in this show, and we took it out. We took it out because with the director together, we were like, it's taking away from the story. It's not, this show doesn't need more acrobatics. I had a jump from pole to pole where I was sort of doing a half turn and one of my coolest tricks, and it just didn't help the story. Like it distracted in a way, and that's always a tough decision to make. It's like, okay, well then.
So for example, I mean, like the human flag is something that like everybody loves to see, although it's probably like in your repertoire, like a very easy thing for you to do, and you don't even like in people. We have this discussion often that, for example, we in the calisthenics world, like everybody wants to see a human flag, but like a front lever is much more difficult to train.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then we were talking about this too, because when, for example, if you would have put a human flag in the piece yesterday, I totally agree with you. It would have looked extremely, well, not to say weird, but
out of place.
Yeah, it like, but how do you fight that battle? Because like, probably you will get this question from, I don't know what questions you get about your pieces, but how do you fight that battle, not putting stuff in, because not everybody can also see what's a difficult element maybe, and also probably not the best, or also not the most detailed or like the hardest performance is not probably also always the best one, right? It just needs to fit. Yeah,
well, sometimes. I mean, it comes down to styles also, again, because we can also go back to, for example, traditional circus, which has more sometimes performances that are more based on, I show you a skill and you clap for it, and I show you another skill, and I'm just here to sort of continue to amaze you and share that with you, and share a sort of wonder and excitement about what the human body can do, which is great actually. So there the story is really clear of like, okay, this is my story. I just need to show you the best things I can do, because those are the ones that are going to make you go most wow, give you the clap and give you the of that circus that also has. But yeah, I mean, we're back to the question, I guess, of like, or like the sort of discussion that I have sometimes about my work. I read on Instagram again somewhere this week that somebody had the same comment of like, but is this still circus? Like, didn't I come to see a circus performance? And is this circus? And to me, yes, it is circus, because again, I spent, like, you couldn't do this without all the circus training that I had. But then you're back to this question of, if you don't see the skill, is it still like, is it like, for who do you make the piece, or like for who, like some of the audience doesn't see the skill that I put in this climbing around in the poles, and so then it's up to me to, I guess, stay true to what the piece needs from me or from us.
Well, and that worked, because that's what we liked about it specifically.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. But it's really, it can be tough, because it's an ego thing again, because I also like it when people are impressed by what I do, and I trained a lot for it. I'm also, there's another thing of like, I just had to think of it. It's a sort of sidetrack, but I age also, I'm 37. So there are things also, like I said it matter-of-factly, but there are tricks that I don't do anymore that I would have to train really hard to get back and to maintain. And I don't have that time. Like, I choose not to dedicate that time anymore to my training, because I'm also the artistic director of a company. I'm also a father of pretty soon 2 children. I want to be something to them as well. So it's also about like choosing where to put your, and I mean, these are pretty sort of random personal thoughts, but I think it comes into the question is like, what is important to me to stand for? Is it, I stand for that circus can be more than just those few skills that you can show people. And again, I also stand for the fact that circus, that the difficulty of something is not always visible. Again, like what Joao does, Joao has even have 10 more years of experience than I do. You don't see, we both don't do the kind of stuff that somebody that just graduated would do. But I believe that you can see something in our work that you cannot see in somebody that just graduated.
Oh, yes.
Because we spent 10 or 20 years on that instrument. And so that's also easier for me now to say than a few years ago. It's something I'm also learning to sort of, like as you age, you learn to sort of accept that part or sort of embrace that part, I guess. But yeah, how do you fight the battle of like, what do you put in and what do you don't? Be like, I think sort of like being honest. But to me, it's always been sort of relatively easy because I really always start from what the piece needs. Like I'm also, so it sounds a bit vague artisty, but I do believe it that way. I feel that I'm also I'm in service of the current project.
So it's very logical, actually. Like when you get into it, it's very logical for you what you're going to do.
I mean, I go back and forth because I sometimes then my acrobat side gets insecure and I start putting in things. But then if I come back or if I ask somebody to sit next to me and look at the thing and I tell them what I'm trying to do and we look at it honestly, then it's clear. It's always it becomes clear. It's never a formula, right? It's never like in the beginning, I know what I'm going to do and I'm just going to execute the steps. It's a process and not a procedure. But if I step back and I look at it and I feel like, but now this is what the project needs. This, okay, well then, then this needs to go out and this needs to come in. And then I need to learn this trick. And sometimes it comes by itself. In this show that you saw, there's a way that I use these elastics that I sort of run through the space from one pole to the next, and I'm somebody who likes to fiddle also with things, like my way of being creative also is just like sort of, I'm not doing it now because everything is, but I need to touch things. I need to sort of, so I spend time alone in the studio just going like, okay, so what is this? This is a glass of water. That's cool. But could it also do no? Because then the water is going to fall out. No, something like that. And so I spend a lot of time also with these elastics in the studio. And then at one point I was just sort of, in the beginning of the show, in the beginning of the creation process, I would just I just tie the elastic with a knot around and then go to the next and then tie it around. But it was you would have this knot like a shoelace knot at every point. And so it wasn't making this sort of neat line that it's making now. And so that kind of bothered me, but I also didn't really know how to solve it. So I just spent probably a few hours altogether with these elastic, just sort of like messing around with them on the pole. And then I discovered, if we put a little click button, so I made myself these sort of click buttons on the bands, and then I put that on one side. And then at one point I found out with the tension of the elastic, I could like make a little, which is a technique, like it's a skill as well. Like it's not a front flip, but it's something that you can't do yet because you haven't worked on it. You could learn it in a few minutes, but so, yeah, I don't know. That's also circus in some way, or like that's also a skill, or that's also, but so this kind of just came because it came because I felt a need to make the piece more clean, and then you spend time. It's time and attention and sort of dedication, I think.
Yeah, and I think for every performance, it's like a scale where you have skill and they have the actual delivery and performance, and it has to match.
Yeah.
If it's too low skill and just performance, then maybe it's awkward. It's the other way around. Yeah. Maybe it's awkward, like you said, that someone just showing off all the highlights, but there is no real connection between you.
I'm not sure if there is such a thing as saying it's a high or low skill, actually. Like, you know what I mean? Visibly, because it's the end product is probably like a very bad word, but like just how it feels. I was wondering if this feeling you have, like what to put in and what not to put in or whatever, like just this concept, is this something you just have? Or is that also does that come from experience, or is it a mixture of both? Or do you think that certain people just don't have it, or you just naturally born with it? Is that's why you're an artist?
I don't really like the idea of anybody being born with something specifically and because there's sort of an exclusion in there. On the other hand, I have sometimes seen people where I'm like, I wonder if you're like, that made me re-question the idea of talent, of like, oh yeah, you do look very talented in this or in that, or like, so I don't know yet about that, the sort of like born with thing. I do know that our lives take even over the course of the first 10, 20 years, so much turns that like, I know mine, even though I led a very pretty sort of like safe, privileged life, like so much happens in a human life that it forms you to be whoever you are and I know my creativity, I feel like my creativity is like a sort of a prolongment, how do you say that, of the like of
protection.
Of like how I grew up and like who I became through that. The feeling I learned it. I learn it all the time still. Like just to be clear, like I work with a lot of people. Like when I started to create Circus performances, which is almost right after I graduated, because as a circus artist, we're generally not really educated to make sort of 30-minute, hour-long pieces. We're generally educated to make like sort of shorter acts that are part of an ensemble or part of a bigger show. At least when I graduated. But so when I started I always wanted to tell longer stories because you can tell something different. You can take a different amount of time and you can take a few more arcs, like attention things down and back up, or you can leave something a bit more unclear to sort of solve that in 20 minutes from now in a longer show than that you can do in a 7-minute act, When I graduated, I toured for a while with my graduation act, which was already like mixed between circus and text and very socially engaged. But it was sort of one story, it was one tuk, and then it was done, like a YouTube video, like a short YouTube video. But when I wanted to make these longer pieces, I started to get help from directors, from people that worked in theater mostly, and I still do. I still work together with. I never make my shows alone. Like, so just to their credit, all of the pieces that I made the last years, I've always worked together with at least a dramaturg or an end director or a theater director that helped me make it. And I learn a lot from them, also from working together with them, and it's about being curious. But I think maybe the one sort of skill or if you want to call it talent or whatever, what helped me from the beginning was that it was always clear for me that I was telling stories and that, or like, I didn't have those words for it yet, but that the stories would come through me and that it wasn't about me. So it's not about the skills that I want to put in, but it's about, it was more important what the stories were and what the shows were going to be. So it was almost sort of natural for me to look at the show and to be like, okay, well, what does the show need?
So that's what I wanted to ask. When did you realize you want to do some, not just artistic stuff, so you also did include some social message or some environmental question or whatever? This was always in you, like you said right now. But I wanted to ask, when did you make the realization, I want to use my artistic abilities to get the broader message across?
Yeah. When I realized I was allowed to do that, and I think it went in several steps. Actually, if I look back now, I went to a circus school that we studied for 4 years, and I was there for 3 and a bit. So I was in my graduating year, which is the year in which you also make like an étude. No, you would call it in theater and dance, like a sort of a final piece, like in which you show everything that you can do, and which sort of like exemplifies like this is who I am when you graduate. And I was really struggling because I could never find that. I was always doing movement, but I couldn't really figure out. I don't know. I kept trying out different things, but it never worked, and there was never any text in there yet. And then somebody, I had shown something in school, and somebody said, yeah, because I always liked to sort of look at the audience. There was always this want to sort of like connect to the audience. So I would always have moments during the choreographies that I did where I would come to the stage and I would like to the front of the stage and I would just look at the audience. And then a colleague of ours from school, she said, yeah, you always look like you want to say something, but you don't. and this really stuck with me. And then in the evening, I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and and she was like, yeah, but she's kind of right. And then I said something like, yeah, but I don't know because I kind of almost agreed with her, I guess, because I said something like, but I don't know what I would say. And then she said, for me now, legendary words, well, then you say that. And then so the next day, it feels like it was the next day, I went and I just like an improvisation with everybody there again, sort of like in the open stage of the school. And I just started talking. And I think I thought about it the day before, like during the day, I thought about it. I made up ideas of like what I wanted to say. And I guess I was always a bit of an angry young man, at least at the time, of like, with some ideas about, yeah, kind of the same as we talked about now, just a little less maybe articulated. So just something came out which was about our generation, but it was also about me having trained for 4 years to do Circus, which felt completely useless also because I showed the audience in my graduation, like, look, I can do all these saltos. And then I did all these saltos, and then I would leave a little silence and I would ask, but why would you do that? Or like, but what is it useful for, you know? So it was a comment on both myself and I felt like our generation is a lot more passive than, for example, the generation of my parents, which was the sort of hippie rebel movement for my feeling. And I actually think now the next generation is much more activistic than we are. But so this was the first time I just realized like, oh, wow, I can do this. I can talk on stage. It works. People listen to me. I enjoy it. It was at the time I would just shout, and I was very, very, very different from Banana, which is much more sort of articulated and professor-like. And this was very just raw, you know, like everything came out. And so I sort of stuck with that for a while. It wasn't really conscious. And then in the last few years, I think I've just become more aware of what it is I'm really trying to do and why I do it. And the more people I work with together, the more clear, like the optimism thing was for me when that came in, because now that if I look back, it was always in there somewhere. But a few years ago, I realized that as an artist, I read a book by Rutger Bregman, a Dutch historian and sort of social commentator, who wrote a book called Humankind, and it talks about these stories again that we tell about ourselves, and that there's this image of humankind and people that we are in the basis we're bad, but if we have enough rules and if we have enough like civilization, then we can be pretty decent for each other. But we need to sort of be kept down. And I never really liked that story because it I don't know, it doesn't make me feel good, and it doesn't make me feel happy about the people around me. So it's very cynical and it's very distrusting. And he sort of proposed a different narrative, and he gave a lot of sort of proof for that. And it made me realize that as an artist, I always felt sort of obligated to be cynical, to be critical, and that's fine. I'm still critical, but I always felt like critical and cynical were sort of together, and especially, you know, the smart artist is the one who's a bit negative and a bit sort of critical and a bit. At least that's an image that I had, and I think it's still in there somewhere that we often equate optimism with sort of superficialness, and negativity and pessimism with like these are the clever, intelligent people that have thought about everything, and they know that, oh yeah, you cannot do that and you cannot trust these people, and so it opened up something for me which connected that, oh yeah, I can talk on stage, and I want to keep telling people a story, but it sort of added on that layer of, now I know what the feeling is that I want to give to the people, and what I feel like is my role in the bigger thing, if you want to call it like that, of like what it is, what I want to share and what I want to spread, as you said.
When you spread positivity and hope instead of just shouting out your anger.
Yeah.
Did this correlate with you being a dad?
That's nice. No, it did come before that, to be honest. Yeah. It did question, like all of those questions did very much come back when I became a father, for sure. Yeah, because it's such a, like, I mean, the future looks, it's a cliche to say, but the future looks, or it feels like I have the word future has a different taste now that I have that I have children. But
someone who lives in this future.
Yeah, really, you can fucking imagine. Yeah. I'm sorry, but you can like imagine she's gonna live in a future that I will not be part of anymore, and that's wild. Like that's really like very big. Like it's such a cliche, but it's so humanly true. Of like, wow, at some point I'm not gonna be there anymore, but you are. That's almost impossible to imagine, but the fact that she's there now gives me a little bit of like, yeah. And every time I see children leave now when we perform the show, it's like I need to tell them like, we're gonna, like, it's for you. I'm do this for them now, you know, like it's like, we need to solve this for them. Like it's crazy.
That was very fitting yesterday. You asked 3 people on stage and it was 3 young people.
Yeah. This always like, it frustrates the hell out of me in some way that it's like, come on, where are the, because it's the part where we literally embody the future, you know, and so like, and so I'm a little like, oh come on, but I get to make a good joke about it that it's like the next generation will solve it all, and the rest gets to sit on their asses a bit. Yeah.
But it was not staged.
No.
But does it often happen like this, that it's
children want to help, of course? Yeah. So that's what's fun, and I have to sort of keep them back a little bit, because there's the first one that I asked on, they get to go on a ladder and they have to go really high. So I don't want them to be children, because it's both unsafe and not practical, because they don't reach that high. So first of all, I always have to sort of leave the children. It's like, no children. And then for the second round where there's 2 more, then I always feel like, well, I'm not going to hold back all the children now. So it's nice, especially the one with the really heavy object. I love that I always give the heaviest thing to the smallest kid, because it just looks really good. Yeah.
So whenever you create a show, and you, of course, you need to practice, and then I don't know what time it takes until it's ready. But do you then ever change it once you play it for the first time, and then you realize, oh, maybe like let's just pimp this part or something?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, first, interesting. You said like I don't know how long it takes, depending on what piece. Months, I guess, altogether. Like, for example, now we're working on a show with 4 acrobats, so that's quite a big piece. It takes about 12 weeks of rehearsal alone already. So like and so we work in these 2-week blocks. So we work 2 weeks together somewhere, we build up the structure, and then we work up the 2 weeks together. And then we will see each other in another few weeks or months, and then we work another 2 weeks. And so in between that is a lot of time of, not all of us, but at least for me and the director, to sort of think about the piece and to think about. But
you don't practice on your own? You only practice together?
With these people, well, yes and no. So we practice specifically for the show together, but everybody will go home from the residency, as we call it, from the rehearsal moment, with inspiration to use in their training. If they have a regular training practice, they will put that in. For example, if I have only a week or 2 in between those moments, I don't take a lot of time to do more training, because I have a lot of other things to do, and I choose to put my time elsewhere. So then I will just come back to the next residency and then train again. But if there's a longer period, now, for example, we have a few months where we don't work together, then I will go into the studio and I will continue. It will sort of be in my head of like, we were working in this thing, I could work on that. So already there's a process of several, like, of building and also breaking down again. Like there might be a show of 1 hour already after 8 weeks, for example, and it will be a very different show after 10 weeks, and it will be another sort of like, so that process of like changing things usually happens already a lot before the premiere. But it's also like a truth for everyone that the show is never finished at the premiere. Like it might not change a lot anymore, but but sometimes it does. And often, like an end, you try out. I remember with the last show that we'd made, like we were performing at the premiere and then 2 more nights, and I think every night we tried a slightly different end. It was small things, but just like, oh yeah, the movie is the music gonna end first, or am I gonna end first? Do I walk off stage? Do I stay off? These kind of small things. It's always different, or like it keeps evolving, and I love, like, to that point. Yesterday was was really special, actually, because we during the sound check with the technician of the festival, we were a bit annoyed because the evening before, so we performed 3 nights in a row. You saw the second one. Tonight's the third one, and the first one we did, there was a lot of feedback. When the voice is too loud and it sort of goes through your microphone and back into the speaker, and so it creates these sort of these kind of noises. And we were annoyed because it sounds ugly and it gets you out of the thing. And we were trying to solve it, and he asked me to speak louder into the microphone, and so I have this sort of this wire mic here, and he asked me to speak louder into it, and I had to look for a way that made sense for me with the character, with the show, to speak louder without shouting at people. And it's really silly because I don't know why I never thought of it before, but in order to do what he asked, what he needed from me, I found out that if I imagined myself to be standing on a TED Talk stage, like we all know, like at least I watch these things a lot also for this show. So I could really sort of imagine the stage of the tent to be like that red kind of like TED Talk and have the TED thing behind me. And in the beginning, I really had to sort of imagine all of this and the audience there. And so it just did something to my voice, if I put myself in that thing with the little clicker in my hand, and it gave me something that made that show, because then to him that was technically so much better. So it was a technical question. It was like he just needed me to talk a bit louder, but I needed to find out. I needed something to make it work for myself, and it made the whole show so much better than the one before, and it's gonna make the one tonight a lot better as well in the next 10, I think. And it was just such a lovely realization, because I think maybe we even had it in the beginning. This is the 65th time that we performed the show, so it's a lot already over the course of 3 years. So you also you forget some things and you get into sort of like routines and stuff. But it was just such a lovely moment of like a show just getting a whole new level again after so many shows. And so this happens all the time. You add little things. I practice. Yesterday I put in a few, I felt like it, so I put in a few more jumps around the pole in the beginning because I was going to enjoy that.
You felt like a monkey.
I felt like being a bit more monkey than I was in the evening before. So yeah, so like it's even after 65 shows that we still. That's what I love about it. It's never the same. It's never the same.
It's funny because we talked about it that
the
this
TED Talk
performance
vibes,
would be the perfect TED Talk. We talked about it right afterwards, but. Another question for the performance: do you adjust the piece to the reaction of the audience? Because you can see it both ways. Otherwise, it's not working. But on the other hand, you can see I'm not here to please the audience. I'm here to show them what I want them to show. So you can watch it both ways. That's why I ask, do you adjust to the audience, or maybe even adjust to the country you're playing in? Because different mentalities, different topics maybe. So maybe this last piece is not the best thing to talk about this, because it's very factual. I think that's the same everywhere, but there are more emotional pieces maybe where you have to adjust the tone or...
Yeah, I mean, both. Even this one, I mean, it's in very simple things, but every audience is different. Like I can feel that from every evening to a next evening. Like it's... And that means that my sort of relationship and the chemistry between us is different every time. But it is also true that there's differences between countries that are quite clear. Like, it's a funny example, but our technician always makes the joke that we need to use the longer music for when we perform in Germany, because German audience is more likely to, in between things, clap. For even yesterday, it happened a few times that I presented a fact or I said something, and then people, out of enthusiasm and out of engagement, their reaction is to clap which is wonderful and it's really nice. But it just makes the whole piece a little bit longer somehow. And if, for example, in Holland, I know by experience that doesn't happen. People clap. They clap, but they will clap all the way at the end. You know, they have a different way. It's just different cultures. Every audience is also, there's like an audience culture, I guess, that you start to know a little bit. And it can also surprise you and also a bit shock you sometimes when you're like, oh, wait, these people were, it feels really cold, you know, people don't react at all. And it's especially a piece like this because people have to, because it's quite, there's a lot of information, and especially here in Germany, I love, this is the first time that we have this, we have top titles. So we have the German text. I speak in English because my German is not fluent enough. I think I could learn it by heart, but I would less be able to sort of like play with it. So we have the translated titles above. So people are also focused, you know. And so in the beginning when I was performing this piece, I had to learn not to go look at the audience to see if they were having a good time. Because then I would look at an audience and I would see them look like this. And I would feel like they were, you know, they were annoyed or they were frustrated or they thought it was shit. But I realized from their reaction at the end of the show that they had a good time. So there's that, and I know that works a little bit different in every country, so people listen differently in Holland or in Belgium or in France than so that's a country thing. But you even asked, like, in general, in terms of audience, yeah, it's always a conversation. It's but again, with this piece, I learned not to, like, again, as you said, I'm not here to please the audience, so I have to be quite strict to myself of like, I give the thing, and I know it's not always fun, so people are also allowed to be a bit shocked or a bit like, oh, what's going on here? What is he talking about? Child mortality? It's very circus or not very enjoyable. Where is this going? Sort of. So I have to allow people to be sort of shocked. But I still listen. I still listen to, like, yesterday the audience, like, we had such a good energy together. There was like, I could feel how engaged you all were with the show, and that gave me, like, it gave me so much energy. But at the same time, I had to sort of, I couldn't just run forward. I had to sort of keep cool, you know. But I was also getting energy from you, and I could make a little joke here and there, and then, you know, keep it. So it's always every show is. I mean, that's the part I love about it, is like, I'm also always nervous, right? I'm always nervous before the show because I never know what's going to happen. And it's so, yeah, I don't know, to come back to the thing of all the way in the beginning is like this unsureness. I think that's why I had to think of it also, because 2 days ago I was standing here for the first time again in this tent. And then I was so nervous, and I was like, why am I so nervous? Like, I know this show so well, like, it's going to be fine. And then I realized I didn't like it. I was okay to be nervous. Like, it's my want not to be nervous was like a wish for everything to be sure. And I'd learned then to sort of embrace that. Okay, yeah, I'm going to be nervous every time because it's going to be unsure every time. And that's what's so, it makes me feel alive. Like, it makes me feel, it's so part of life somehow to me, this thing of like, it's just, it is unsure. Like, a lot of it is sure, but there's a lot that's unsure. I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. Like, and to me, that's like, it's almost like a spiritual thing of like, oh yeah, we're like, this is a one-time thing we all do together, and it connects me so much to like what life is. And but I have to embrace the unsureness, I guess, of everything. And so to listen, be curious and listen all the time of like, this audience different. You react like that. This joke didn't work today. That's okay. Like, yeah. So yes, every time.
So you give also some breathing room in the performance that you know already. Oh, I can do a joke there if it fits, or I can speed up or slow down. So you have a lot of breathing room. It's not scripted like.
Oh, the jokes, they felt so natural. I was wondering this too.
Yeah, and actually a lot of them are the same. Like, I give more or less the same jokes every time. Like yesterday, there was a few about the audience members that I think were quite sort of improvised on the spot. But there's a few. I mean, for example, like now for 2 times already, or like it happens more often when I say in the middle, I say 1988, which is my birth year. I present this like, and then this is the year 1988, and people applaud for that moment. And then now for like a few times in a row I make the jokes of like, that must be an applause for my mother then, because she birthed me in 1988. And then people, but I will only do that joke if I feel, because I like doing that joke because I think it's a funny joke. But there are days where where I know like I'm going to be able to do this joke as if it's the first time. And there are days where I just feel if I do it now, it's going to be forced. Like it worked yesterday, but it's not going to work now. But that's a sort of honest, self-critical thing every time of like, okay, no, don't do it. Like you're not going to get the same reaction. Just don't try, you know.
Is 60% banana always in English?
Or in Dutch.
Or in Dutch, okay.
Yeah.
Is there a difference to you in performing in one language versus the other?
The director says that he thinks it's better in English, and I can sort of understand, because it might make it, again, that TED Talk thing might actually work slightly better in English, because also it creates, even for me, I'm very fluent in English, but it creates a tiny distance from me to the language, to the subject. It's also been translated by someone else, the text, you know, because I wrote the text in Dutch and then I had it translated, which it's not very sort of very crazy, beautiful theater text, but the fact that maybe I feel a little bit more like I'm executing or like sort of presenting something in English than in Dutch, but both work, to be honest.
Maybe it feels a little bit more international because English is like a very, you could call it like the international language probably. So maybe that's also the reason. It's
a TED Talk language, no? So that's why I'm ready for the TED Talk if I'm in English. And then
maybe that's why the vibe was so strong with the TED Talk vibe.
Yeah.
So if someone listens from the TED organization,
definitely.
TED, if you're listening, please, you know where to find me.
That's
in the text. What do you call that? The show thing.
Show notes.
Show notes.
Regular listeners of our great podcast with
the Munich TEDx from Munich. Yeah, all good.
I think there was one.
I'm sure. I'm
quite sure. I know some of the organizers somewhere.
This is the start. This is where it all started.
Yeah.
Nice.
Saw it here first.
But you're welcome to come visit us in Munich if
I would love to. Yeah.
If
we
you're
can
nearby.
train in your gym.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be nice. Yeah, you can put up a pole somewhere.
How often do you train? How many hours?
Both. It really depends. It really depends on the period. Again, as I said. First of all, I'm not like, there's different kinds of acrobats. I'm not an acrobat that by themselves, without any sort of specific show motivation, still takes pleasure in spending hours on developing new movement material. Like my interest is too much in also all of the text and the content, and I'm also storytelling, right? So I'm also making a movie, and I'm making I do so many other projects next to the shows and the acrobat being that depending on the period I might not, like now for example. Well, it was also I was on holidays, so I spent a few weeks actually not really training. But then in holidays I got a bit restless, so I started just doing some exercises But then if I do train, I will train like 1 to 2 times a week for 2 hours, something like that. And that's usually enough. If I want to feel really good about myself, then I enjoy also doing something like swimming once a week, you know, just something sort of full body workout. And I had a very big injury for a year, actually. That was an interesting topic as well, which caused me to train a lot more, actually, because I had to rehab for 1.5 years almost to get back from that. So I'm actually almost at the end of that, so that's why I had to think of it. So sometimes I still need to do physio, like I go to the physio to do rehab training. It's a whole different game again.
Interesting.
Did you injure yourself in a performance?
No, luckily not. I injured myself while teaching I teach at a circus school in Tilburg sometimes. And I was holding somebody that was doing a trick, and I was holding them too well, actually. And so I ruptured my biceps tendon. So your biceps is connected with 2 tendons here at the bottom. And one of them ruptured completely off, so it had to be surgically reattached. And I was in a cast for 2 months. Ouch. And then tendons, they take about a year to recover. So I wasn't allowed to do acrobatics for almost a year.
Yeah, and it takes a long time for your arm to be really straight again.
I couldn't stretch it in the beginning. It hurt too much. Yep.
We have some people who had a ruptured bicep tendon, so we know about this.
It's terrible.
And it takes more time than you think.
Yeah.
And you think it's not so important because it's just an arm, it will function. Yeah, not if you want to perform.
At that level, it's, No, it was an interesting journey also. I mean, it taught me a lot, even about just anatomy. I didn't know the complete function of my biceps until I lost it for a while. So that was really interesting.
So if you wouldn't have gone into acrobatics or Chinese pole, is there anything else where you would have said, yeah, that would have also been very cool to do? Except for like the storytelling and everything.
No, exactly. I mean, nowadays I would say something like, when I'm just on my free time, I enjoy being in the garden and just like I would say I'm a gardener or something. I'm somebody who likes to work physically, you know, like I really enjoy, as you noticed, also to philosophize and to talk and to think. But I also need to move. I need to. My hands, my body needs to.
We had like exactly in the last podcast, we went to a gym next. It's kind of nearby, like maybe 5 to 6 kilometers, and we were talking exactly about this topic about gardening and growing your own vegetables and stuff like this.
So nice, yeah. Because again, it connects. Like it's something that there's something physical about it. So there's this thing of like I can connect to my body a bit, but I connect to nature, which without being too hippie, it is just the basis of everything for me. So
and your food if you grow it yourself.
Oh yeah. So it's like there's a health thing to it as well. So yeah, I just really enjoy that as well.
Yeah, well, it's been awesome, this podcast with you. We really, really love if you come to Munich, if we maybe do a session 2.0.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Nice. And I try to arrange a TED Talk for you.
Yeah, wonderful. Then we make a combination. Yeah, very good.
Can we watch another performance of you like in the next? When's this new piece coming out?
Yeah, the new piece comes out in April actually. So there's a little break now, and we have a premiere in April, which is in Antwerp, and then we tour a bit in Holland and Belgium, and. I would say keep looking at the schedule of for example, the Berlin Circus Festival, but this is for Munich people. We haven't visited Munich that much yet. We also have some contacts in Munich, so we'll. And there's some other cool stuff happening in Munich in terms of circus, so keep an eye out for that, and then I'll let you know if I'm ever in the area. And
that would be great. So if somebody says like, okay, I really want to watch the piece that we watched yesterday, if they want to watch the show, what's the easiest way for them to follow along? Like on your website or Instagram? Or?
I guess Instagram would be the easiest. Both is better because I try, but it's a job on itself to manage an Instagram account. But so you can follow Monki_business on Instagram. Remember to write Monki with an I and not EY. And monkibusiness.nl is our website.
I will put everything in the show notes description, display it. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Well, I guess then thank you for your time. It was really awesome to see. For those of you listening, we would be really happy if you drop us a rating. And then hope to see you soon.
People can get that T-shirt, by the way, online as well. This is the shirt that we also. I think it's important to spread some love. So there's the shirts, and if you go to our website, I think it's monkibusiness.nl/love. Then you can also buy them there.
There's a yellow and a blue one, right?
There's a yellow, blue. There's a beige one. It depends, to be honest, a little bit on what we have in stock at the moment. But I'm also looking at restocking. So if there's a lot of people interested, then we would get some more. So yeah, who knows?
I will also put the link in.
Nice, thanks.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Good.
Okay.
Then I think we must let you go because I think you have to perform.
I should maybe go perform. Yeah, nice. We have to build up still. So
yeah. Exactly. Then it was very nice to have you.
Yeah,
thank you for responding
me.
so quickly.
Yeah, cool.
Bye-bye.
And see you next week. Bye.